Hi everybody, the team here at GlasWeld really wanted to put together a video to help support you, to make sure that each and every day that you're working with your Zoom injector or any of the other GlasWeld injectors goes as smoothly as possible, and so you can get the most out of your GlasWeld investment. So in this video, we're going to show you how to clean your Zoom injector, we're going to show you how to change your seals, how to maintain your seals, so you can get the most out of them and keep your Zoom injector in tip-top working condition. So let's get started. Okay everyone, so we really want our Zoom injector to pull a really nice strong vacuum. And so the thing we're gonna do to test that is first just make sure that our upper piston is threaded all the way down, like so. You can see the end there. Now push your finger over the end, press against the end and hold it there, and then turn the handle back. You can turn it all the way back or even just a couple of turns, and right away you'll notice whether you have a strong vacuum. You could hear the suction on this one. I'll show you that one more time just so you can see it. Press against the end, turn the handle all the way back, and that will show whether you have a strong vacuum there. You can really tell that we do on this particular one. If that vacuum is weak or not there at all, it's definitely time to change those seals on the inside and give the Zoom a good cleaning as well. Also, if you notice that there's any grinding in the threading of the handle or any significant resistance anywhere in this up and down process, that could also indicate that we need to change some of the seals in the Zoom injector or give it a good cleaning. So let's show you how to do that. Okay, so now we're going to take our Zoom injector apart. Now it's a really beautifully elegant and simple design with really only two main moving parts, but it's important to know how to do it properly, and that'll save you a lot of hassle. So you'll notice on the Zoom that there's a little arrow right here that says tighten cap. So the cap is this upper part here. This part we call the body. So to tighten it, you would turn the cap this way. To loosen it, the cap would go away from you. So the easiest way to disassemble the Zoom injector is to grab the body with your left hand and then take the cap and spin it free from the body. So spin it away from you. So you can see I'm turning it away from me with my right hand until those threads break free. When they break free, then the next thing you have to do is grab those two parts and pull them apart. It takes a little tug because the seals can really hold in there sometimes. They're creating a vacuum, of course. So now we can see those two main components of the Zoom injector. Now real quick, I'm gonna show you how to put it back together, and then we're gonna show you how to change each one of these seals and break down how long they last. So to put it back together, all you're gonna do is spin the cap down. Now you're gonna do the opposite. You're gonna hold the cap in place, and you're gonna take the Zoom body to put it back together, and you're gonna thread it onto the cap just like so. So now that we got the Zoom injector apart, let's look at the different seals. We're gonna start with the upper piston seal. Now this is the most important seal in the entire Zoom injector assembly. And the reason is that it is responsible for creating most of the vacuum that really helps us through that repair process. You'll notice that that upper piston seal has a slight angle to it, so it angles kind of downward like this, and there's a little groove along the top as well. So let's show you how to remove that seal, and we're gonna talk about how long it should last. This seal on here should last in the neighborhood of around 100 repairs, possibly longer if they're well maintained. And if you run into issues where you have grinding or the injector body not turning properly, a lot of times this is the responsible seal in addition to a loss of vacuum. So it's a great place to start if you're having any issues. So let's show you how to remove it and then how to install a new one. The easiest way to remove it is to take two fingers, almost like a pincher, and squeeze like this on the Zoom, on that seal, and then with another finger kind of roll it off. So you're essentially trying to create a little bit of distance from the body, and then you're kind of rolling it off. Now over time, these seals, when they swell, they start to kind of deform and they'll fold over, and that's also what could cause the loss of vacuum or that grinding. So we want to make sure that we put a fresh one on. I'm going to show you how to do that here. So we got a brand new seal here. You can see there's a groove on the top. That's that groove we talked about. And then there's the angle to it as well. So that angle needs to be facing downward and the groove needs to be facing up. Now the easiest way to install these, you're going to slide them right over that lower piston, I like to actually bring it above the area that's meant to hold the seal first, just like so, and then get it in the right direction with that angle facing downward, and then just slide it right over the top, kind of with your thumbs, kind of pushing around the edges. Make sure the flange and that groove is still facing up. And now our upper piston seal is fully installed. Now, I want to show you too that with the upper piston seal, we do need to lubricate it, and we're going to use this lubricator called Injector Seal Lube. But it's really important with this upper piston seal that we want to use just the tiniest amount of lubrication. You really don't want to over lubricate this seal. Over lubricating it could cause the seals to swell just from sitting in your kit case for too long. So you see how small of an amount I put there on my fingers? Just a tiny bit on the outside of that seal, just like so, just barely noticeable on that upper piston seal. And then we can put a little bit of that excess on the inside of the Zoom body, and that's exactly where that seal is going to contact. So that's all we need to do to swap out our upper piston seal and lubricate it for use. Now let's move on to the lower piston seal. The lower piston seal is responsible for injecting the resin. It's also responsible for helping us to hold the vacuum while we inject the resin. So it's important to change it as well. I recommend changing them both at the same time in most instances, and I'm going to show you how to do that. It's pretty simple. So very similar technique to the other one. You're basically going to pinch it real tightly, and then roll it with the other finger. Pinch and roll, that's the basic technique. Then slide it off, and you'll notice that over time, those seals will stretch and swell a little bit, and then they'll impact. And this seal could cause some grinding as well if it's swollen or worn out. Okay, so we've got a new lower piston seal here. Let me just show you how to put it back on. I would just slide it into the groove and then try your best to stretch it up over the top, and then kind of work it with your fingernails back down into the groove like so. So now this lower piston seal, now that we've got a fresh one on, it is not lubricated with our injector seal lube. And the reason for that is that this is responsible for injecting the resin. So to lubricate it, grab one little tiny bit of any one of the GlasWeld resins, and we're gonna put just a tiny amount, enough just to barely contact the surface there, and that's it, like a half a little drop. And that's enough to lubricate that seal and give it a little bit of lubrication for the inside of the Zoom body. So now we can spin that cap back down like we showed you, and we can take the body, we can hold the cap in place and turn the body onto the injector and test our vacuum. All right, so we also have this little seal here on the Zoom body that we call the Zoom body seal. And to remove that, all you gotta do is just grab it with your fingernails and just pull it right off. That's good to change once in a while because it basically prevents the cap and the body from over compressing. So when you see that crack or start to discolor, remove it, take it off, and then we'll grab a new one. And it's really easy to put them back on. Just slide them in the grooves, kind of stretch them around the Zoom body just like so. And then we can put our whole Zoom injector back together by threading the body onto the cap. Here we go. Okay, so now let's talk about the outer white seal. The outer white seal for the Zoom injector provides the seal against the glass. These seals are great because they're made of silicone. They'll usually last more than 100 repairs, provided that you take good care of them. They're also double-sided, so they just snap into place. And you can't go wrong. You can either put it in one direction or the other direction. But it's important to, between repairs, the biggest thing with these seals is to make sure that between repairs, you take them out and really press on them with a paper towel or a towel like this to get any excess resin out of them. Over time, what may happen is they get little splits in them. Maybe they fall to the ground and you step on them, or they might get kind of swollen with resin and become excessively mushy as compared to the other ones. So just keep an eye on that, and you've got some replaceables for those. And they should last, like I said, at least 100 repairs in most situations if you take good care of them. So with all of the GlasWeld seals on the Zoom injector, including the outer white seals, the key thing to extend the life of them is to not overexpose them to the lubricants or the resins unnecessarily. So as long as you clean out your outer white seals after each repair, they'll last longer. And one suggestion, if you really want to extend the life of the seals on the inside of the Zoom Injector, is if you take the Zoom Injector apart by spinning the cap off and pulling it apart. Some customers like to store these in 2 separate parts in their kit. And by doing so, it allows all the seals to breathe overnight or over the weekend. And that will extend the life of the seals because it allows them to kind of retake their shape and not overly swell over time. So let's show you the different seals that we sell at GlasWeld.com and how to make sure that you choose the right ones if you want to change some seals on your GlasWeld injector. Now, the first thing we want to make you aware of is that on GlasWeld.com, you can buy seals for the older generations of GlasWeld tools, including the EcoVac, the G3, the ProVac 2000, and the Standard. So make sure that you select the right injector because not all of these are the same on the older injectors. The upper pistons and the lower piston seals in particular are of a different size. So we want to make sure you get the correct ones. Now you'll notice that the upper pistons come in a 2-pack. You can buy those separately in a 2-pack. Same with the Zoom body seals. The lower pistons, these ones down here, come in a 6-pack, small bag like this. The outer whites also come in a 6-pack, or you can buy an assortment pack, which includes all 4 of these in one bag. And that's a great way to just make sure you have all the seals that you need. And those are available not only for the Zoom injectors, but also the previous generation of GlasWeld injectors. Now, speaking of previous generations, you'll notice that there are 2 options when it comes to outer white seals. The thicker ones are specifically designed for the Zoom because they work well with this ratchet mechanism. They're also softer, more forgiving, and they're really great seals. If you haven't used them yet, I highly recommend that you use them. They can also be used with the older GlasWeld injectors. However, the caveat there is you will need to use an extra drop or 2 of resin when using these because they are thicker and they do use more space. Now, the outer white seals that are from the older injectors are denser, they're also thinner, and those work great in the EcoVac, the ProVac 2000, or the G3, even the Standard, but they will not work well in the Zoom injector. So make sure you don't purchase those for the Zoom injector. But that should cover the different seals options on GlasWeld.com. All right, so let's show you how to properly clean your Zoom. Now, the first thing is between each repair, it's really important after you take your Zoom injector off the glass, after you take it out of your tripod stand, just simply grab the white seal out of the end. What I like to do is grab it in a paper towel or a rag and squeeze it. Squeeze that resin out of it. Now that will prevent the resin from building up in the seal and allow the seal to breathe. Now bring the lower piston all the way down to the end. So thread it down until it stops, and then take a paper towel and clean any excess resin out of that tip of the injector. Now your injector is ready to store from one repair to the next. So that's as simple as it is from one repair to the next. Now, what about when it comes to daily or weekly cleaning? Ideally, we encourage you to clean your Zoom at least daily, and if not, at least weekly. So let us show you how to do that. Again, the first thing we're gonna do is remove the cap. So grab the body again, spin the cap off of the body, hold it apart. Now, the most important part to clean is this lower chamber here. This is where you can get a buildup of resin over time. And if this builds up with resin and you don't clean it regularly, you could end up with a grinding impact because basically that starts to take up some of the space. That buildup takes up some of the space in the injector and could cause that. Same thing is true here in this lower chamber area. So what we're gonna do is just take some denatured alcohol. If you can't get denatured alcohol in your area, you can use mineral spirits or even isopropyl alcohol. We're gonna leave the seals on, and the reason for that is we don't wanna stretch the seals and pull them off every time. And the seals will resist a little bit of alcohol, so no issues there. So we're just gonna spray that lower piston, spray the seal, do the same thing on the lower chamber. I like to spray it from the inside up here too. And if you don't have a spray bottle, you can always just dip your little brush in some alcohol. And then in particular, this lower chamber, kind of work it right there for a few seconds. And that lower chamber, again, that's where the resin is gonna sit. So that's where you're going to have the possibility of that building up. On the lower piston, just wipe it off well. If you do that once a week or daily, you'll have a lot less issues. And then if you get a buildup of resin over time, you can use the toothpick side of one of these little cleaners that also comes in all the GlasWeld kits, and you can kind of use the edge of it to remove any excess resin here in the groove. So if your white seal isn't sitting properly, that could be the issue. Don't use the metal probe, that could damage the injector, but you can use that to just remove any excess resin. And then the upper chamber could just simply be wiped out with a paper towel. It doesn't need to be brushed necessarily. And that's the entire cleaning process as far as daily use goes for the Zoom Injector. So it's pretty simple, pretty quick. So then you would just lubricate up your seals again, injector seal lube on the top, resin on the bottom, put it back together, and you're ready to work for the next day. Now, we also recommend that if you have the opportunity once a year or so, we really highly recommend that you do some long-term cleaning. And that's a pretty simple process, but what you would do is just take the Zoom Injector apart, remove all of the seals, body seals, lower seals, upper seals, and soak both parts, especially from here down, in a paper cup of ammonia overnight. Make sure that the upper handle up here doesn't get exposed to the ammonia, because that could eat away at the plastic. And then once they've sat overnight, just simply dry off, clean off with the little pipe cleaner all of the metal parts, put brand new seals on, lubricate it, and put it back together. And 99.9% of the time, that will solve any grinding issues that you have. Here at GlasWeld, when we get injectors that are sent in for maintenance, that's exactly the protocol that we follow, and it almost always solves any grinding issues or any long-term clean issues that you might have. Now, in this segment, we want to go through some common mistakes that could lead to some of the issues with grinding, or maybe with the upper piston threading down automatically on its own, or causing the seals to wear out prematurely. Now, probably one of the most common things that we see is after a technician finishes a repair, it's a common issue to pull the injector off and maybe leave it sitting on its side, partially in a vacuum. So if it's sitting like this on its side, or worse yet, if it's sitting like this after a repair in a vacuum state, so not with the piston threaded down. So here's why that's a potential issue. When that's in a vacuum state, the resin can flow from up here past that lower piston seal and get in the upper chamber. So now that seal, that big upper piston seal, now has resin all over it. So as you can imagine, that's going to cause a couple of potential issues. Immediately what that will cause is that when you start to do another repair, you might get this automatic turn down effect. So where the upper piston handle basically starts to turn down on its own, and that's because the resin is in the upper chamber. It's lubricating that seal, and it's causing, because it's so thin, it doesn't resist at all. So it's just basically causes it to turn slightly down. And then the other issue is that if you get that resin in the upper chamber, it will really cause your seals to swell more quickly, which could cause them to fail more quickly as well. So whenever possible, try to prevent that. What we recommend is when you remove the injector from the glass, usually it's in an injection state, so just leave it there. Pull it off, set it down like so, which is better if you're working in the sunlight anyways. And if you remove the injector from the tripod, immediately pull the little white seal out and turn it this way, all the way down. Don't turn it the other way. Don't turn it back, because that's going to allow the resin to flow into the upper chamber. So just make sure it's all the way down. And if you have a little excess resin there and it's sitting on its side and it's threaded down, nothing's going to happen. The seals are going to be just fine. Now, the solution to either one of those issues usually just involves taking the injector apart, drying everything out really well, and putting it back together. Most of the time, that's all you need to do, and then your vacuum will come back, and you'll be able to solve that pull down effect on the upper piston. If that's not the case, then we're going to recommend that you go ahead and change the seals. And if that still doesn't work, then you're going to go ahead and clean and then change the seals to help prevent that from happening. Now, another common mistake that could happen is over lubricating the seals. Let me show you what that would look like on the inside here. So if I were to take the upper piston seal and I was to take a big gob like that, and I was to go like so on the seal, and I was to go like so on the inside of this, well, my injector might work. It might work for a couple of repairs, but what's going to happen is that these seals are way over lubricated. They're going to swell really, really quickly, and I'm going to have to change them a lot more often. So we already showed you how to lubricate it properly. Just make sure you use the tiniest amount. And the same could be true with the lower piston. You just need a little tiny drop of resin. You don't need to pour resin over the end. Another possible mistake would just be completely under lubricating. So the inverse could be true. If you don't put any lubrication whatsoever on the upper piston or on the lower piston, that could possibly cause some issues as well. But most of the time, when we find that customers have a challenge, it's because they've over lubricated one of those seals. Now, another common thing that we run into is just a lack of cleaning. You get a long-term buildup of resin on the lower piston or in that lower chamber, and that could affect the tolerances. It could cause grinding. It could even affect the vacuum. It could affect the smoothness of the operation of the injector. So cleaning your injector regularly, investing 2 minutes of your time once a week or once a day will really make a difference in keeping your injector in tip-top shape. Now, if you have any issues with being able to screw the injector down so it starts to resist in any particular areas, like even what's happening right now, that's because of that over lubrication. In most cases, that'll cause those seals to swell and they won't be able to push properly down into the injector. So the solution to that most of the time is just to, again, take the injector apart, clean your seals off, make sure that you don't have excess lubrication in the body or on the upper piston seal, and that should solve the problem. And if not, you can always change the seals.